Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're staging a showdown between two absolute giants in the cloud, Amazon Kinesis and Azure Event Hubs. If you're building apps that need to be lightning fast, reacting to things the instant they happen, then you have to know the difference between these two. So we're going to break it all down and help you figure out which one is the right tool for your job. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll set the stage on why real-time data is such a huge deal right now. Then we'll meet the contenders, Kinesis and Event Hubs. After that, we dive deep into how they're different, check out the ecosystems they live in, and finally, give you a solid checklist to make your decision. Let's get into it.
So why all the fuss about real-time data? Well, because it's not just some cool tech feature anymore. For a lot of modern businesses, it's everything. Being able to process information the second it's created has completely changed the game for how we build applications that feel alive and responsive.
I mean, just think about your own experience. You expect your ride-sharing app to show your car moving in real time. You expect stock prices to be up to the second. In the world we live in now, if your data is slow, you might as well have no data at all. That speed is literally the difference between leading the pack and eating dust.
So how do they do it? The secret sauce is something called event-driven architecture, or EDA. And the core idea is pretty simple. Instead of having a system where everything has to happen in a specific order, one step waiting for the next, you have a system where different parts just shout out when something interesting happens. Like, hey, a user just added something to their cart, or sensor 123 just sent a new temperature reading. Other parts of the system can then listen for those events and react immediately, all at the same time. And this approach is a total game changer. It lets you build massive, complex applications out of small, independent pieces that aren't stepping on each other's toes. That means fewer bottlenecks, way more responsiveness, and it's the perfect recipe for building those huge, scalable systems that power just about everything these days, from online shopping sites to vast networks of smart devices.
Okay, but for that whole event-driven world to work, you need a kind of digital central nervous system to manage all those millions of messages flying around. And that's exactly where our two contenders come into play, AWS Kinesis and Azure Event Hubs.
So how does this whole thing actually work at a high level? It's pretty straightforward. First, you have producers. These are your apps, your servers, whatever is creating the data. They send that data into the streaming service, which acts as a giant organized inbox. And then you have consumers on the other end, which are applications that grab the data from that inbox and do something useful with it, like run analytics, fire off an alert, or update a live dashboard. Now, at their heart, Kinesis and Event Hubs are designed to do the exact same thing. They are the super scalable, super reliable front door for all your data. We're talking about services built to slurp off millions of events every single second without ever dropping one. They're like the most dependable postal service you could ever imagine, but for data.
Okay, but that's where the simple comparisons end. The moment you pop the hood and look at how they're built, you start to see some really big differences. And these aren't just minor details. They're things that could be the deciding factor for your project. This is where it gets interesting.
First up, how do these things handle a flood of traffic? The best way to think about it is like a highway. If you have a ton of cars, you need more lanes. Both Kinesis and Event Hubs can add more lanes, but they have different names for them and, way more importantly, very different rules for how those lanes get opened and closed. And right here is one of the most critical differences. Kinesis has something called Shards, and in its on-demand mode, it's like a smart highway that automatically opens and closes lanes as traffic changes. It scales up and it scales down. Event Hubs has Partitions and a feature called auto-inflate, which is great at opening new lanes when traffic surges. But it doesn't close them for you. You have to go in and manually scale back down, and if you forget, you'll keep paying for a giant highway you're not even using. That's a huge deal for your wallet.
Next up, let's talk about language. Or, in the tech world, protocols. Basically, do your applications and the streaming service speak the same language out of the box? This might sound like a small detail, but trust me, it can be a really big one, especially if you're trying to move an existing system to the cloud.
All right, and this is a potential deal breaker for a lot of people. Kinesis pretty much speaks one language, the standard web protocol, HTTPS. Azure Event Hubs also speaks HTTPS, but it's multilingual. It also has native support for the Apache Kafka protocol, and that is a massive advantage for Azure if your team is already using Kafka. It means you can just point your existing code at Event Hubs, and it works. No rewrites needed. That can save you a ton of time and money. So what about keeping data around for a while? Maybe you find a bug in your code and you need to reprocess all of last week's data to fix things. Well, in this category, there's a clear winner.
AWS Kinesis lets you keep your data for up to a full year. Azure Event Hubs, on the other hand, tops out at 90 days. So if long-term data replay is important to you, Kinesis has a serious edge. Of course, getting the data is only step one. You need to actually process it to find insights. Here, the two platforms have very different philosophies. AWS gives you the keys to a full-blown workshop with its managed service for Apache Flink. It's an incredibly powerful tool where you can build really complex analytics. Azure's approach is more like a perfectly organized toolkit. It gives you Azure Stream Analytics, which uses simple SQL and is fantastic for getting straightforward jobs done quickly and easily. Okay, we've been deep in the technical weeds, so let's pull back up for a second. Because as much as we can compare features all day, the final decision often comes down to one simple question. What does your company's world already look like? The ecosystem is everything. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. What it's really saying is, if your company already lives and breathes Microsoft, you use Office 365, you log into everything with your work account, all of that, then Azure has a massive home field advantage. It's built from the ground up to just fit. It makes things like security and access control way, way simpler. So you can really see the two different mindsets here. Azure is all about that deep integration with the Microsoft enterprise world. It's for the company that uses SQL Server and Power BI for everything. AWS, on the other hand, is more of a builder's playground. It's a favorite among startups and teams that love to mix and match different open source tools and want the ultimate flexibility to build things their own way. Okay, we've covered the tech, the philosophy, the ecosystems, so now for the big question, how in the world do you actually choose? The truth is, there's no single best service. There's only the service that's best for you. So let's create a simple framework to help you figure that out. This quote from Zach Wilson really is the bottom line. It's a strategic choice. Don't just look at the feature list. Look at your team. Look at your company's DNA. Are you a Microsoft shop through and through? Azure is probably your path of least resistance. Are you a build it from scratch, serverless first kind of place that loves open source? AWS is likely your jam. So here it is, your 4-point checklist. Just walk through these questions. 1, what's your home turf, Microsoft or a mix of everything? 2, what's your team good at? Are they SQL wizards or are they Python and Spark gurus? 3, do you need that easy button Kafka support? And 4, how much do you care about set it and forget it scaling to control your costs? All right, let's put it all in a nutshell. You go with AWS Kinesis if you live in the AWS universe. You need that powerful, complex analytics engine with Flink. You need to keep data for a long time, and you want that true set it and forget it scaling. You pick Azure Event Hubs if you're a Microsoft enterprise, if you need that it just works Kafka support, and if your team wants the simple SQL-based way to analyze data that plugs right into Power BI. At the end of the day, there isn't a wrong answer here, only the answer that's right for your team and your goals. The best choice isn't the one with the most features on a spreadsheet. It's the one that gets out of your team's way and lets them build amazing things, not just for today, but for whatever comes next.